Barry, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Jim?
All right. Why are we here?
Well, we're here to hear your testimony today, and I suppose we had to do it the same way we did the other ones, and that is begin with what it's like to grow up in small town America, your family setting, what things may have played a role in your coming to Christ, and what things even might have kind of slowed that process. So just give us your testimony, how you started out.
Okay. Born in Duncannon, Pennsylvania. The youngest of three children, three brothers, to Robert and Gladys Hoffman. Both of my parents had come into that marriage with children. My dad was way ahead of his time. He was divorced twice before he married my mom. My mom was divorced once before she married my dad. And each of them had, let's see, my mom had, that's same. My mom had a boy and a girl, and my dad had a boy and a girl. So I have not only two full brothers, but I've got four half-siblings, two of which I have never, ever had any interaction with, even though we grew up in the same town. They were approximately 10 years older than me. I mean, there was opportunity to connect if they wanted to. My other brother and half-brother and sister, I had limited contact with my half-brother, and my half-sister lived right beside me. It was a weird situation. My sister Roberta was raised by my grandmother, and we were in what would be today called a townhouse. We were in a row house at the time, and my grandmother raised my half-sister, and she lived right next door to us, so I knew her very well. My half-brother, was the one that I knew, lived about 3 blocks away from me on High Street with my aunt and uncle. Now, I don't know what the story was with my dad, why he didn't keep his kids. I don't know. Oh, by the way, I should correct the record. My dad wasn't divorced twice. He was divorced once, and his second wife deceased. So I had I had I got four halves, and two full siblings. I'm still at the end of the pack. I was still the youngest. I still have a Bible, Barry, that I got for perfect attendance at the Presbyterian Sunday School in Duncannon, Pennsylvania, 1956. Says presented to Jimmy Hoffman for perfect attendance in 1956. I remember well my Sunday school teacher there. I don't remember anything she taught me. I can remember the room. The room had it was an old all wooden room, true wooden paneling, wooden doors, the whole thing, maybe mahogany, very nice. The room was filled with, as big as it was, the room was filled with pictures of the disciples, or obviously artist renditions of the disciples, but you could identify with all the disciples as you looked around the room at them. So I remember that, but I don't remember a thing she taught me, except I knew that this woman loved me. She treated me with kindness. She resembled Tweety Bird's keeper, the grandmother that has Tweety Bird in the cartoon, the big fluffy woman. That's who her name was Margaret Gibson. She was an old maid, and I remember that she loved me. And then I don't know what happened between ages 6 and 12, but I do know that at 12, I went to my mom and asked my mom if she would take me to Sunday school.
So you quit going at age 6 and wanted to go back at age 12?
As best I can remember, Barry, that's right.
Okay.
So and really, at 12 years old, most boys are going to their parents and say, "Look, I don't want to go to Sunday school anymore. It's too boring."
Right.
I wanted to go for some reason. Of course, I think the reason is that the Lord was drawing me at that time, and so she agreed, and we started going to the Duncannon Church of God. We went there, I think, because that's where she went when she was a child. At the Duncannon Church of God, being 12 years old, I was eligible to go into the youth group. And I went into the youth group. And again, I had youth leaders who I knew loved me. Don't remember a thing that they taught me, if anything. I'm pretty sure I gave them a hard time, but they loved me to the point that they actually included me in some of their family events. And for me, that was unusual. I mean, as a kid, vacation was non-existent. The only thing that my brothers and I ever had that even resembled a family vacation was a one-day trip from Duncannon to Gettysburg and then on down to the snake farm in northern Maryland. But I got to tell you, I mean, I'm trying to remember. It was my mom and dad and my two full brothers and I think a half brother and a half sister that I knew. I mean, we must have had a car packed full. But it's what we did. So we made that day trip. To this day, if I would talk to either one of my full brothers about this trip, I know they would remember it. It was that unusual that we would do anything as a family. So anyway, during my early teen years, I was going to visiting this youth group, Duncannon Church of God. I know seeds were being sown. I couldn't recall even one of them. And then when I got out of high school, I stopped going to youth group. And then 3 years later, well, I'd say a year out of high school, I met Jackie, and then so we dated for 2 years, and then got married. But when we got married, I decided two things. Well, it happened in two stages. We decided we're going to go to church. My motivation at that time for going to church was I wanted to play on the church softball team. We were living in Enola, and there was an Enola United Methodist Church right up the street from us that I had heard had a softball team. I wanted to play softball. So, okay, we're going to go to church. Hey, if you want to play softball, you got to be a member of the church. So that was a pretty light process. I don't remember any questions that the pastor asked me. I mean, I would have asked somebody, hey, what, do you know the Lord and those kind of things? I don't think that was asked. But I did have to be baptized. It was baptism by sprinkling in front of the church. Jackie didn't have to be baptized because I think she was baptized as a baby. And she had some kind of record of that. So we're in that church, and we were there about 2 years, and I played softball and all that. And then 2 years later, we decide we're moving back to Perry County. And at that point, get back in Perry County. Hey, let's go to church on Sunday mornings. Why? I have no idea, Barry. The Lord was drawing us. Man, why would I do that? Jackie as well. Neither one of us come out of a Christian home. So what do? We go back to the one church in Duncannon that we knew, which was the Duncannon Church of God. And we're going there for, let me see, that would have been 71 we got married. We moved back to Duncannon in 73. So I didn't get saved till 76. So we went there a couple years. And unbeknownst to me at that time, there was at least a mild revival going on in America. A lot of people coming to Christ. The Jesus movement was part of it. And during that time at our church, there was like 6 couples our age that were most of them newlyweds. Some of us had children, some of us didn't. About 6 couples there that formed kind of a nucleus for a group of we were the young people in the church, formed a nucleus for a group of people we called the fellowship workers. And our goal was, hey, we're going to do things to help around the church, help people of the church, those kind of things. So one of the couples in that group was Steve Boyer and his wife Carol. And Steve had recently received Christ. And if he said it in those words, I don't remember hearing, but he probably did. But Steve and Carol kind of befriended us. Steve and I had been hellraisers in high school, and So we had this bond going, and we worked at the Red Rabbit together. So we had a friendship that went back into childhood. So Steve and Carol kind of connected with us, and Steve was telling me about this book he was reading called The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey, and it was an account, a prophetic interpretation of what Hal Lindsey thought the end times would look like in the world. If I would go back and read that book today, I would think, man, no, not true. Didn't happen. No. But it piqued my interest enough, and at the end of at least one of the chapters, there was an invitation to receive Christ, including what we would call a sinner's prayer. Jackie was reading it in January of '76, just like I was, on my own. One day by that time we had put a house trailer on a piece of ground, on my own. One day after showering, it was just more real than I care to imagine. I won't say that I had an out-of-body experience, but what I know for sure to this day, I can see myself on my knees, on the floor, in our bathroom, receiving Christ. And again, I'm not claiming some out-of-body experience, but it is as though I was above myself, looking down on what was happening. And I bowed my knee and received Christ. Unbeknownst to me at that time, that same month. And we don't know who was saved first, but at the kitchen table, Jackie, all by herself, the same way, reading the book, received Christ. That was January of 1976. The fellowship workers that I already described were fully engaged in the church, and we decided, hey, it's the bicentennial year for America. Let's do something for Duncannon. So there were a bunch of young couples with big ideas. What can we possibly do? Well, we decided we were going to put on a 4th of July celebration, because I believe that year 4th of July was actually on a Sunday, or it may have been on a Saturday. Actually, I should go look it up sometime. But we had decided that we're going to do this 4th of July celebration, where it would start early evening with I think a corn soup supper, homemade ice cream, followed by, we wanted some entertainment to come. So Steve Boyer said, hey, let's ask this group that actually is anchored in Camp Hill. Let's ask them if they were fairly well known. Let's ask them if they would come and sing that night, do a concert. It was the Couriers, and I don't know if you remember that name or not. They might have been even before your time. You ever hear the song "Statue of Liberty"? Christian hymn.
I don't know that I've heard that.
Okay, well, you need to look it up sometime and listen to it. It'll give you goosebumps. Anyway, the Couriers had won Dove Awards and those kind of things, Grammy Awards for that song. So, what's it going to hurt? We'll ask them to see if they'll come. Steve calls them up. Yep, we're free that night. We'll be there. Okay, so the Couriers are coming. And at that point, the Couriers were a pretty good draw. So they drew a lot of people. And at that time, we wanted somebody to come that would really preach a great message. And Steve, again, happened to know this guy named Tom Smith, who had been a missionary with Message to Israel and a Church of God pastor, and then later became a Free Church pastor. Let's ask Tom if he'll come and preach on the Rapture. So that night, we had the Corn Soup Festival, the homemade ice cream, the Couriers, and then Tom Smith preaching on the Rapture. It was an awesome night. So that's in the summer. But by the fall, I had already enrolled in Harrisburg School of the Bible. Harrisburg School of the Bible was a small Bible school in Harrisburg. And at that time, if you had asked them what they were doing, they would say, we were turning out preacher boys. The flavor of the school was of the Bob Jones mold, very legalistic Baptist mold, but very good doctrine. So I had enrolled in the School of the Bible. And my first teacher was this guy named C. Leroy Shoemaker. Now, if I told you C. Leroy Shoemaker, you would probably think this guy's probably African American. Nope, white as white can be, but a great Bible teacher. And so I wanted to take the classes for credit, but my goodness, it was $25, Barry, to take a credit course. I couldn't afford $25. I think at that time my take-home pay, and we were a one-income family, my take-home pay I think was $126. So I couldn't afford $25 to take. I could afford $15 though, just barely, to audit the courses. So that fall of '76, I'm taking a couple courses, and the Lord is speaking to me about the church I'm in Duncannon, and I'm really not getting fed, or at least I think that's what I was what I was hearing. So I did something that I would never today advise somebody to do to find out the will of God. I put out a fleece, because somewhere in my travels I had heard of Gideon's fleece. So Thanksgiving evening, I'm sitting at my dining room table in our trailer, reading and praying, and put out a fleece. Lord, if you want us to leave the Duncannon Church of God on Christmas Day, let us have rain, snow, and sunshine. So that's Thanksgiving night, I think. Thanksgiving Eve or Thanksgiving night. So the month passes, we're at Christmas, and Micah, our oldest, is now like 2 years old. He was born in '74. And we go to bed on Christmas Eve, and sometime during the night, he gets up. He couldn't sleep, his tummy ache or something like that. And at that time, I could hear rain on our roof. It was a typical house trailer with a metal roof. You could easily hear the rain. It was raining rather hard, and not long, but just rained enough that I knew it was raining. Went back to bed. Got up in the morning, bright sunshine. Visited, I think, some family in the morning for Christmas dinner or something like that. But that night there was a concert by the choir at the Duncannon Church of God for Christmas. So by this time we had rain right after midnight. It's sunshine all day long. We go to the cantata, I think they called it, at the church. And we left the church, and we're driving down High Street in Duncannon, and a snow squall comes right through town and follows our car maybe a couple hundred yards, and that was it. But I had my rain, sunshine, and snow on Christmas Day. We believed we had heard from God, and we were leaving. So when we go to leave for church, where we want to get some better Bible teaching, where are we going to go? We're going to go to the one guy that I know at that point that I really respected as a Bible teacher, C. Leroy Shoemaker. Went to his church. He was Plymouth Brethren. So we went there for about a year, and we figured out, what? Driving from Duncannon and Harrisburg every Sunday with two small kids is just not working. We need to go to a church where we're closer to home. At that time, there was a startup church called Bible Baptist of New Bloomfield. They were an offshoot of Bible Baptist in Sharmanstown. So we hear about it. Let's go give it a try. I don't know how the logistics of this work, but we joined that church on our second Sunday there. Okay. So they must have putting members on a fast track, but their requirements for membership were quite simple. A testimony of salvation and baptism. They didn't require any more than that. So we joined on our second Sunday. Went there for Barry for maybe 3 years, maybe 4 or 5, and at that church we were involved with youth ministry. At one point, we were leading a youth group, and we were in charge of junior church every Sunday. And junior church at Bible Baptist in New Bloomfield at that time consisted of Jackie and I and about 50 kids between 6 and 12 in a room that was probably, 20 by 50. So it was a rowdy bunch, but I was already understanding that our role was to sow seed. So every week I would faithfully, the best I could, preach a junior church sermon to these kids. A lot of them were part of the bus ministry. Their parents didn't bring them to church. A lot of them were part of the bus ministry, and so we would preach to them. I would preach to them, and Jackie would love on them and do what we could to minister to them, but without really any formal training. So that goes on for a couple of years, and we changed pastors, and the new pastor is very legalistic. He was not a Bob Jones grad. He was a Liberty Baptist grad, but very, very, very legalistic. I mean, it mattered to him whether or not the women wore dresses or pants, whether or not the men had hair over their ears. Did you dance? Did you play cards? The usual litany of external tests to test your spirituality. So, man, we're looking at that. And by that time, there was another couple that had come into Bible Baptist that had been to Bible college. They had both been to Moody Bible Institute, and it was Gary and Martha Norris. And Gary spotted this legalism. I didn't even know what to call it at the time, but so he identified it for us, and so we decided that this isn't for us either. So we left Church of God because we wanted better teaching. We left the Plymouth Brethren Church, that was Calvary Independent in Harrisburg, because it wasn't close enough to home. Now we're leaving Bible Baptist, which was close to home, but it was going legalistic. And we're leaving for another startup church. There's a startup church at that time starting in New Buffalo. And it was Christian and Missionary Alliance. I didn't know a lot about them, except I did some reading on them and found out that, too bad we didn't have the internet at that time. I could have found out a lot more and a lot faster. But did some reading on them and found out they're pretty good doctrine. And kind of like what they stood for. And they were meeting in the firehouse in New Buffalo. So I think it was January of 1982, we started going to Christian Missionary Alliance. When we get there, we find out that we're not the oldest people in the church chronologically, but we might at that time, having maybe 5 years of being Christian under our belt, we might be among the most mature people in the body, because there's a lot of new believers. So the pastor honed in on that right away, and in a very short time, I was teaching the adult Sunday school class. Little did I know that would become my preferred role for the rest of my life. But I got a lot of experience there teaching the adults, and went pretty well. We went from the firehouse to building a building and all that. We spent 17 years there. And after 17 years, at that time, we had also made a life change of sorts. I had always driven back and forth from Duncannon to Harrisburg to work, about 30 miles. Well, no, 20 miles, but 30 minutes. And Jackie now, the boys are out of the house. We had 17 years at that point at the CMA church. The boys are out of the house, and Jackie's going to go back to work. So she does. And about a year into that, she says, I can't do this drive every day. By that time, I had been doing it for about 30 years. I said, okay, we'll move. So we decided to move. When we moved to Enola. And our initial plan was to stay at the CMA church in New Buffalo, because we had roles that we liked there. But it's about that time as well that while few, if anybody, I won't say nobody, but few, if anybody, deserted our Sunday school class, and it was growing, I had the sense that even though they show up every week, they had stopped listening to me, and I didn't like that. So we talk to Jackie, we pray about it. It's time to leave, because not only, and the natural break is we're living down the road, living in Enola, rather than driving from Enola to Duncannon to go to church. And at that time we were going 3 times a week, Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. The reason we will disclose that we're leaving is that it's because of the distance. When a lot of it had to do with the fact that I felt the class had stopped listening to me. So at that time, again, there was a new CMA church starting up in Harrisburg. So we knew I think one couple I think that used to live in Duncannon and had now lived in Harrisburg and were going to attend this startup church. So they invited us to come, so we go and throw in with that team. And this time we're not just the most mature spiritually, we're by far the most mature chronologically. But now at this point, let's see, what would we have been at? About 50-ish at that point. And so we throw in with them, and of course the pastor there, I thought, man, we need some seasoned Christians. We'll take anybody. You guys are welcome to come. And they were kind of scraping by financially, so having a couple that's in their 50s tithing into that church was important to them. So Jackie was started singing with the worship team. Oh man, it was the forerunner of what I really don't appreciate today, and that is a rock band worship team. She enjoyed singing with them, and at the time, because it was so different, not a problem. I can worship here. Anyway, I get a little bit of opportunity there to teach, but not often, because it was the kind of church where it wasn't the thing to go to Sunday school. It wasn't promoted by the pastor. They had one because I was there, but that was about it. I did get a chance to preach when the preacher was out, and during that time, I also went and got my Christian Missionary Alliance credentials, where I was licensed to preach. I could have pastored a church if I wanted to, but I had no intention of going for ordination. But I've been qualified as a pastor if I wanted to. I thought, well, I'm going to get a lot of opportunities to go preach places, but they never materialized either. So a couple years in that church, about 5 years in that church, and we're feeling kind of lonely because there weren't many people our age in that church. A lot of young people, not many people our age. And Jackie especially was feeling like her social needs weren't being met in that church. So I was out of town one week, and she went with one of her friends to visit Christian Life Assembly in Camp Hill, which is a Pentecostal church. And she loved it and said, well, you gotta at least give it a try. I said, okay, I'll go with you. So I went one Sunday. Man, the Lord convinced me in that service that we should be here. At that time, the pastor was Pastor Paul Wislocki. Just to say he was a saint of a Christian would be redundant, because all Christians are saints. But that's how people would probably describe him. I mean, what a joyful soul he was. And they were very welcoming. I loved it there. And I went thinking, I'm never going to get a chance to teach here because I've never spoken in tongues. But that turned out not to be the case. We've been there about 6 months, and one of the pastors invited me out to lunch. Two of the pastors invited me out to lunch and asked me about teaching. And they said, have you ever taught before? Oh, yeah, about 30 years. But about 25 years, I guess, at that time. And we started talking about the doctrinal differences. And coming from a Christian Missionary Alliance background, there really aren't many, because the Assemblies of God and Christian Missionary Alliance come from the same root, the Azusa Street revival in the early 1900s. The differences were Assemblies of God kind of emphasized speaking in tongues, whereas Christian Missionary Alliance, the rule was seek not, forbid not. Because A.B. Simpson, the founder of Christian Missionary Alliance, had a different experience than speaking in tongues. This was a little different. So anyway, I said, well, what about this? And they said, well, look, if tongues ever becomes an issue, all you have to do is say, this is what the church believes. I have never spoken in tongues. And they told me you can even say if you want to, I don't believe in it. That really wasn't the case fully at that time. But I was permitted to say this is what the church believes, and so that's what I'm teaching. But I have never experienced this, and they said they'd be fine with that. So, long story short, I settled into what I would call a long-term teaching ministry Christian Life Assembly, and remain there to this day. What I didn't cover was my two sons' growing up years. Both of them, if you ask them, they would tell us that we drugged them. We drugged them to church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, and there is some truth to that. I wouldn't change it, though. I mean, lots of seeds were sown. If you had asked either son today if the rapture occurred, would they go? Yes. If they died tonight in their sleep, would they go to heaven? Yes. So at this point, I pray for them that they would draw closer to the Lord. I'm going to take them at their word that they know Him. I'm going to pray for them almost as though they are not saved. I'd like to see a closer relationship with the Lord. But they're good. I'm going to say they're good boys, but they're 48 and 45, so they're good men. And the Lord has blessed Jackie and I with a wonderful Christian marriage. We just said we're about to celebrate year number 51 this year. Barry, I'm going to take a breath. And okay, so what did I leave out? What holes are there you want to ask me about?
Well, you have the joy of being able to edit this in any way you want, and I certainly give you full liberty to do that. The two things that you mentioned early on that I did not know. So let me question you there. One was almost like psychoanalyzing, which I'm not qualified to do that. But I just wondered if your family setting left an emptiness in you where you were seeking family from the church.
Oh, Barry, that's not just a question. That is the question I think in my mind. I should have brought it out. My dad died when I was 45. Yeah, my dad, 42, died in 1992. And all my life, I felt like my dad held me at arm's length. Never came to my baseball games. As you know, we were part of 2 championship wrestling teams. Never saw me wrestle, not one time. Didn't come to my graduation. And I never really understood why. When I was really small, I felt like I was adopted. But then as I got older, I realized people don't adopt kids they don't want. So I probably wasn't adopted. But after my dad died, my oldest brother, we were talking. He said, well, you know what Dad thought, right? I said, no. Turns out my dad had accused my mom of having an affair and thought I was the product of the affair. So all my life, I'm wondering why this man never didn't treat me like my brothers. We had a family business that both my brothers got invited into, but I had to go fend for myself. So yes, to say that I was seeking some kind of family connection, probably spot on. There's probably a sense in which I should be grateful for my relationship with my natural father, because it probably drove me into the arms of my heavenly Father.
A lot of times whenever I hear testimonies, I always find that there is some thread in there, some place where a challenge God took and turned it into a positive. He used that challenge to draw you to Him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that. My other question was, and you said this and it kind of caught my ear. You talked about when you put out your fleece for the weather on Christmas Day, but you said you wouldn't recommend people do that today. My question is, somebody's listening to your testimony, why wouldn't you recommend that?
Well, if you read the account of Gideon and put out the Lord had already told him what He wanted him to do. He just couldn't handle it, and then he had put out a second fleece. It's almost like, well, I think history shows that he really didn't want to do what the Lord wanted him to do. I see it as I think God honors our ignorance at time, and that's what I think. I put out that fleece in ignorance. The Word of God is filled with so much wisdom. I don't think you have to put out a fleece to find the will of God.
Maybe we shouldn't have to, but that's our point of need, and God is willing to honor us at that point of need. What's the danger?
probably no danger, and maybe I'm being a little smug by saying that I wouldn't recommend people do it. I mean, I'm 46 years old in the Lord. Maybe I forget, Barry, what it's like to be young and clueless in the faith. I mean, I remember it well.
Well, it would be great if God spoke and we acted.
Yes.
But we're not always that way. Sometimes God has to nudge us along, whether you want to call it a police or a sign or an affirmation from another believer or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes we need something to encourage us.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree, and it did encourage us. I mean, it's what I don't. Without that, if God would have not answered that fleece the way I had laid it out, I don't know if we'd have ever left that church. I mean, Steve Boyer, who was my confidant inside, is still there to this day. He's still at the same church. So I don't know what my journey would have been like.
Okay. And then one other question, because this again comes back to your family. Were you the first in your family to make a, as you would describe it now, a profession of faith in Christ?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay, how did they react when you shared that with them?
Not with enthusiasm. My dad was going to... I witnessed to my grandmother probably within the first year of being saved. And she looked at me that night, and her and I had a really good relationship. Growing up, of course, she understood my situation at home when I had no clue what was going on at home, why I was being held as an outcast. But she understood it, and she lived next door. So her and I were tight growing up. I mean, she was really good to me. So I was witnessing to her, and that turned her. She looked me in the eye that night and said, well, when I die, you can tell people I'm in hell. So the next day, the excrement hit the fan, shall we say. My dad heard about it, and he was going to come and punch my lights out, according to my brother. My brother lived beside him, and he was getting ready. He was getting in the car to go punch my lights out. But by that time, my brother Tom had actually gotten saved himself, and he kind of stopped Dad. And Tom was his favorite, so if Tom said something, Dad would likely listen to it. So he said something and kind of stopped him. But my dad was going to come punch me out. It would be like making good in that prophecy: a man's enemies would be those of his own household.
And then, of course, we're not spring chickens anymore. How do you see God's story in your life ending?
I want, Barry. This I know. I say I know. I'm as certain of it as I can be certain of anything that's not in the Bible. I know God is doing something new and different in me these days. He's giving me more study. Well, first of all, being mostly retired, I have more study time. But he's giving me more, a greater depth, I think, of his word that I can, and an ability to share it. And at this point, I'm of the mindset that I want my last works to be my best works. And I'm going to qualify that just for a moment, because I just right before you and I got on this Zoom call, Jackie and I had taken out to lunch. Well, we drove an elderly woman in our church, whose name was Ruby. She's 94 years old, and she invited us out to lunch. She wanted to buy us lunch. Okay, Ruby, you don't have to, but we'd love to spend some time with you. And I was talking to her about, and I said to her, Ruby, at this point I'm of the mind that I just want my last works to be my best works. And she kind of dropped her head a little bit. And this is a lady who has been a really solid Christian. She was, I never heard this before. She told me at lunchtime, she was pastoring a church at 12 years old. During the war years, evidently, pastors were hard to find. So she had been taken under the wing of some local pastor in Illinois, and he was kind of encouraging her to get down to this church and preach on Sundays. And she made visitations on her bicycle, those kind of things. But so she has had a long lot of years of fruitful ministry. And she kind of put her head down when I said, I hope my last works are my best works. And she says, yeah, my last works aren't going to be my best works because there's just so much I can't do. And I thought, man, I get it. The day may come when I won't be able to do what I do today. And maybe, even though I want my last works to be my best works, maybe they won't be. Although I did want to encourage her with, she has a strong prayer ministry. So that is hard to measure how effective you are. I mean, if you think of just the number of people you get prayer requests from, most of them, a lot of them, well, I'd say 99% of the prayer requests I get fall into two categories. Somebody's sick or somebody's lost. One of the two. A lot of those people I pray for, I don't get updates on. I have no idea. Some of them I know their health. But as far as praying for the people in their life that they want to see saved, that might not happen for 20 years down the road. But I'm praying today that seeds will be sown in their life. So that kind of Ruby's ministry right now is mostly prayer because she at 94 she can't do much. So I just wanted her to be encouraged that her last works even might still be her best works, because she has a great relationship with the Lord and she uses that relationship to intercede for others. So you just don't know. And when I say I want my last works to be my best works, I have to fess up to the fact and own up to the fact that too is hard to measure. So I think at any time all we can do is our best.
Right. Over the years, I've had a number of people, as you said, just like throughout the years, not physically able to do the things they used to do. I've had a number of people say, well, all I can do is pray. And I say, don't ever say that's all you can do because that's a lot.
Yep, it is.
If you pray for those who can go, if you storm heaven and bind the devil, I mean, that's going to make a big difference. So don't ever underestimate the power of your prayer.
Yep.
So it's great that those things are still around to undergird those of us who can still go.
Oh, yeah. And I think we're just geared around activity. We oftentimes measure our worth by our activity. And it's
right.
You think, because we both have gray hair, you think we'd have enough wisdom to realize, that might not be true.
Yeah. But I've enjoyed hearing this. Like I said, there's a lot I did not know about your early years. Maybe I've heard it before and just didn't remember it.
You weren't paying attention.
That's what I do. You act like you're listening.
Yeah. I have a friend who says his wife accuses him of not listening. He says, I do listen. What is it? I do listen. I just don't, it's not obey is not the word. Just too bad I didn't think this through before I started saying this. I might have to edit this.
Yeah.
He says, oh, no. He says, it's not that I don't hear you. I don't listen to you. That's
right. Well, I've been accused by my wife a lot of times not listening very well. There were years when her job was terrible. And she would come home from work crying every day, with Crystal and all that. So it was not a good work situation. So she would come home, we would walk like we still do. And for the first 20 minutes, it was a great session. And I just said not a word. We just walked. I held her hand, we walked, and she had a bent. And when she got it out, she was okay after that. But that's just where it was. And I remember one day I was counseling her what she should do.
Okay.
And she reminded me, she says, I'm talking to my husband, not my pastor. So sometimes we do need to be better listeners.
Yeah. But if I could add just one thing, it's probably, I'm weird in this sense. It's probably not, both my boys accuse me of being obsessed with death. But there's probably not a day goes by that I don't contemplate my own mortality.
Okay.
And I think about it will matter to me what people say at my funeral, not because so much of that I would be exalted, but I want my life to matter. So I often think about what will people say at my funeral, and I think what I want to hear is that from my family, I want to hear that my husband loved me, my dad loved me. From my friends and church family, I want to hear he was faithful. And if I could hear that. And on I already told Jackie, on my tombstone, I want engraved, "Here lies a man who was mildly obsessed with the glory of God."
Okay, that's good.
I want to make much of God, so that's what I want to hear.
So you're going to be cremated, you'll be buried, what are you going to do?
I really don't care, but Jackie cares, so I've agreed to be buried. To me, it's irrelevant. So we actually bought burial plots up in Duncannon, and I stood on them and took a picture of the view and sent it to both my boys. Texted this picture to both my boys. "Hey guys, I just want to let you know I bought some property in Duncannon today." I sent them the view. Now, Seth figured it out right away because he caught some of the tombstones of the scenery. I don't think Mike had got it. Because I think he called me that night and asked, "Hey, what property did you buy in Perry County?" "Well, man, it's not very big, but I don't know, 2 by 4 by 6, something like that. 2 by 6 by 6, I guess it is."
Okay. I always tell people Mary's going to have me cremated, throw me in the kitty litter, buy a cat. At least I'll be good for something.
At last.
At last, yeah. Well, Jim, I've enjoyed your testimony. Like I said, there's things there that if I didn't know, you refreshed my memory of it. I didn't know them. And it's any testimony of God working, it can be very meaningful to anyone who hears it. So, like I say, edit it the way you see fit. If you need to add anything, that's fine. I'll look forward to you when you post it. We'll check it out.
All right, Barry. Hey, thanks a lot.
Hey, God bless you, sir.
God bless you.
All right, bye.